There's a word that I use a lot, and I back up oftentimes and throw in little caveats and semi-caveats. And I guess if we were being casual, I could say that I have assumed that all of you in some way followed what I was generally pointing towards. The word being objective, and me having never spent a great deal of time talking about what I mean as opposed to what life has made people believe they may mean. But I continually point out that people are not objective, or if things were looked at, some particular something objectively, or sometimes I may not have made the connection that strong to you verbally, I'll say that if men were actually intelligent in the way in which the dictionary would define it, or in the way in which they believe they are. Now I will cure that flaw of not speaking much about objective, in case any of you found it to be a lacking. And those of you who didn't, now you're going to find it to be a surplus. Let's start off and consider this, that there is nothing that you can absolutely refer to as being separate, and this includes human intelligence. Now, beyond my little warnings and asides concerning the word objective, if you will notice throughout history, right up until today, there are people discussing, writing about the idea of objectivity, and it has never been satisfactorily defined. I don't mean by me. Humanity does not find any definition, any notation. They do not find the latest discussion of objectivity to be adequate, even the people who present the latest discussion. In my continuing attempt to try and help humanity all I can at no expense to myself, let me take the first opportunity, which is not the point of my discussing this tonight whatsoever, but at least to tell humanity, if you want to pass the word along, of why they cannot satisfactorily, by their own definition, by their own field, cannot satisfactorily describe, define the concept of being objective. The reason they can't is there is no such thing. So, in case you'd like to pass that along to any friends or relatives you may have in the philosophy trade, but that's it. Not that it'll do them any good, because they will not be able to hear you how? Objectively. Even if something struck them like that might be true, they'd think, wait a minute, I got a paper that's already at the printer going to be out in next month's Harvard Quarterly all about that. Hey, that can't be true. Even if I heard that's true, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear it at least for another 3 months. Right? But the idea of objective, the dictionary, the best I recall, would go something like, objective is, I'm not faking it, this is close to what it says, is that it is being freed, or something being free from human, or from personal feeling. Something free of personal feeling based on facts. Now, that's a fair quote from some dictionary, really. I'm not just bumbling about. It's, last time I looked, it was something very close to that. That objective would be that which is free from personal feeling, comma, semicolon, based on facts. The problem that cannot be seen by the followers in the city of Old Chief Two Eyes is personal feelings are facts. Even in the city, those that are wired up to hold down the position of being an intellectual critic, an intellectual observer, they must have their brains warmed by the heat and the passion of the blood. There is no such thing as the definition the dictionary gives of objective. Free from personal feeling. Where are you going to go to get something free from personal feeling? Now, right quick, if you're really good, turn on yourself like an angry warthog and realize that if you were at city level You got personal feelings about what I just said if I leave it like a question, like they can't do it. Or I'll make it a challenge. Your own conscience go, the hell they can't. I can. I knew somebody that could. Hey, you're right. Stick it to them again. That being your reaction to me talking about objective. Being free from personal feeling based on facts. Now, for you people that might be seeing me and this stuff for the first time or two, this has nothing whatsoever to do with me being a social, intellectual, psychological, any kind of critic of humanity. That's not the point of me bringing this up. All of this has to do with being the way that life works, and it's invisible to man. Even the parts that are within the electromagnetic visual area of the spectrum, the audio, the tactile, the very things that can be seen, which is still just part of the whole scenario, but even those parts remain invisible. That's why I bring up these as examples. Now back to what I was saying. If we had, let us say, a writer, national publication, newspaper, some respected, the country's full of them, people who are respected thinkers, political, social, critics, observers. And there they sit having to write a column every day or once a week. And they are passing. This is their position in the city. And I'm not attacking this. I'm just taking it as it lies. That they'll say, all right, Mr. So-and-so. They call him Fred Smith on the New York Times or Newsweek magazine. And they introduce him to him on a show or at a banquet. And he is, part of his title is, whether they say it outright or not, is he is one of the intellectual observers and writers of our country today. Now, I'm letting that go. If they say that in the city, that's fine by me. I don't care. So I just want you to know that that's the kind of people I'm referring to. Respected. That's part of their title. That's part of their job description. The person sits down, and they got to come up with the article for the day or the week. And they're mulling through other people's articles and the news and this and that, trying to think what's going on in the world. The blood diffusing through life itself and coming into men, then coming into men's brains, and coming into an individual man's brains, and it's like connections. The man searching, what will I write about? Now, it's Friday afternoon, I got to have the copy in before I leave today. What will I do? Now, let's say that for some reason he looks around, he sees an article, he's got on the radio, something comes up about the population. Now, I did not do any sort of reading or research, and you're just going to have to take my word for this. You must be as well read as I am about ordinary affairs. That there are books out, there are whole movements having to do with, let's stamp out the population growth, zero population groups. There are books out, there are people around touring the world, speaking out, that the problem facing mankind is not the heating up of the planet's ozone layer, the depletion of it. It is not the danger of atomic war. It is the population bomb, that we're going to eat ourselves into oblivion. We're going to starve ourselves. You do know, surely, that there are books, respected thinkers, statistics, that if you follow what they say in their little program, their speech, you would have to leave if you're an ordinary person, being jerked around, playing the sucker role that life wants you to play with the information it puts out. Not the people, not the lecturer. No, no, no. Life. You would leave, and it would all make sense. You would have gotten on the train, and you went to the destination. You were surrounded by other intellectual people, perhaps many of them even wearing tweed jackets this time of year. Some of them were pipes in their mouth. Many of them having taken showers within the week. A decent lot. And the man proves that you hear him speak or you read his book that, my God, I had no idea. Famine is just around the corner. It's not just Ethiopia. It's not just in Mongolia. It's there now, but the rate things are going, they're going to leave there. The hordes will be at our door wanting all of our food. We're done for. All right. Do you also know that there are books out, there are lecturers out, there are people out There's statistics that can show that that is a bunch of intellectual falderoy. That is ridiculous. There's always been a certain amount of people hungry on this planet. It's no worse. In fact, they can show it's better. Notwithstanding the fact, they have to admit the obvious, that there are people starving, and they'll point out it's political reasons. People are starving in Ethiopia because of political warfare is going on, and this and that. And they can show, if you get on their train, another decent lot, intellectual people, that they can show that the idea that starvation or hunger is a problem on this planet is almost inconceivable that any intellectual person would believe that. Food is rotting. It's a matter of distribution. It's a matter of intent. There's really no such thing as hunger by itself, just the word hunger. There are political problems because we've got enough food in this country. I've heard these kind of figures, and I'm not denying this. I don't know any different. That this country right now continually has enough food stockpiled to feed the hunger of the world, but they can't get it out. It's just a matter that the system of life is not arranged to where every human at any given time, or any group of humans, is being adequately fed. But the idea that in some way the human race is so overpopulating itself that it's going to destroy itself is just ridiculous. And you listen to it and you think, boy, what a relief. Because what he just said is true. I know there are people going hungry and I wish I could help, but he just pointed out it is not a fact that the human race is about to starve itself off the planet through overpopulation. All right, you got all that. So here sits our renowned, well-respected, hard-hitting, objective writer on the political scene, the American scene, the contemporary scene. So this week he comes up, let us say, with an article, a good hard-hitting article, maybe a full page he gets every week or every day, or his column, that the idea, the fact, the danger, the ever-present danger that we're going to starve ourselves off this planet, I've decided it's time for me to point out to you people, my fellow readers, that it is too abused by flows and ebbs of interest, and has gone through perhaps 5 years ago, he'll make up some figure, the last time he remembers somebody else writing an article like this, that it went through a certain spate of temporary interest, but then it gets pushed aside. But let me tell you what, listen to some of the figures. Supra. I'm telling you, the biggest danger, not the greenhouse effect, not the deterioration of the American economy, it's overpopulation, and for some reason we won't face up to it, blah, 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 another, whatever it takes, 7,000 words to fill up his column. All right, and it may appear to be, if you read it and you're just an ordinary person, it may appear to be a rather, strike rather, it would appear to you to be, all right, rather, objective, statistically correct, analytical detailing of this problem. And you could read it if you were the steward specialist, and I said, well, is this man driven by his own personal feelings, prejudice? You'd say, no, not him, not Fred. No. Well, read his article, There's nothing in there. He does not appeal to the mob. He's not crying out, let's attack somebody. He's not laying the blame on some political party or some race or some religion. He's simply what? Presenting the facts. All right, but I started out pointing out to you very correctly, there are facts that would support either position, that there is a danger in the population growth of human race, or there's not. Why did he pick one or the other? Why? Well, now, he doesn't know why, but let me point out. I just use psychological terms, and for you people just seeing this, psychological terms are for children, but some of you, if you just started this, you're children. So you'd rather hear me talk about that than do it on a chemical or electrical basis, which you would think sounded weird or else scare you because you believe inside that you got something else. You don't have a columnist in you. Well, what if this man was wired up in such a way to be perhaps something just this side, just a few doors this side of a good, upstanding misanthrope, that the man is at least non-gregarious. And so he's sitting there, what will I write? And it seems to strike his attention. A blimp goes by with a sign saying, read the population bomb, so-and-so's new book. He goes, population, that's it, population. He's read enough that he can almost come up with an article out of his head. But which way? That there is such a thing or there's not? And I point out that the man really has not much regard for the human race. He's not very sociable. Which one? Now, I'm just making up, of course, an example. There are facts, statistics. Of course, they would say there are objective facts in each camp. And the followers of either pro or con regarding the problem of expanding population, they would say that their facts, their info is the objective, whereas the other side is relying on passion, prejudice, misinformation. But back in the city, the reason I went through all that example, take anybody that is apparently the epitome of a thinker, a person who would present you with information free from personal feeling based upon facts. How did they pick out the facts? What made them pick out that subject? Who cares about the population bomb? How about people who are wired up to such a way that if you looked in the dictionary, by the way, under the word gregarious, it might have their photograph as an example. How about those people? Would they not be the ones that say, hey, the more the merrier? You know, let's have more people. I wish I could stick around. I wish that right now I feel like there's not people close enough to me. The apartment building I live in, there are 4 or 5 empty apartments up and down my hallway at any given time, and I wish people were there. We need more people. I started out the first sentence of this, 9/10 the first sentence, I pointed out that nothing is separate, and I cannot talk about. It's impossible, me or anybody. But it's impossible even for me to in some way talk about the idea of objectivity freed from anything else. You can't listen to it. Whatever I attempt to send out, I can't do it freed from any passion. If there's no passion, if there's no feeling involved, not only would I not be here talking about objectivity, I wouldn't be here. How's that? So that's the sending part, the receiving part. Whatever it is you hear. I can say, I could start out and say, now listen, I'm going to talk about something that could be quite profitable, but each and every one of you, by God, you have got to try and be objective, at least for 10 or 15 minutes to hear this. And I give you the dictionary definition. I want you to try and all be objective just for 10 minutes. So I cover the heart of this matter. Now I want you to listen to me, and I want you to free yourself, to free your hearing, to free your own intellectual receiving mechanism from personal feeling. And just listen to the facts that I'm going to send out. What facts am I going to send out? Well, whatever I feel like sending out, right? Which ones are you going to hear? Well, I'm going to hear the ones that I feel like are deserving of good hearing. And I'll accept the ones that I feel like blah, blah, blah. But none, does everyone, when I said I've never really talked about this much, I guess I should go back and at least rhetorically ask 2 or 3 questions around the periphery of this, which is just important as the core of it, since it has no core. Does everybody understand that what seems to be the core of something in the 3D world could be the periphery if you get around the corner? If you could see it beyond the 4D world into, say, just even a 5D complex, that what seemed to be the core could have suddenly fallen over here, and it could be now part of the periphery. And what appears to you to perhaps be part of the fringe element of something, if you could unfold it at least one more time into the 5th dimension, it might suddenly jump in, at least in that dimension, at that level, to be the center of it. But that's another story, isn't it? Even those who do not use the word objective, many of you who might have a ordinarily wired up nervous system that thus far thinks is rather philosophical or theoretical, even if you never think the word objective, notice this. If we ask humanity to vote and I jumped up and I could get on the big podium to get everybody's attention. You remember the one I mentioned that could be right outside of Cleveland? I don't know why I picked Cleveland years ago. But if I got all of humanity and I said, listen, most people feel like that you should do better, that you should change yourself and improve yourself in some way. Am I right? We got all of humanity there, and everybody going, yeah. Now, so all right, just give me. I'm just sort of interested. Now I got you here, but just from my own curiosity, and I was talking to a few people. Tell me this: what would you say personally? Just put it simply, and to cover as wide an expanse of your personal life as possible. How would you describe, real quickly, what is it you would change about you personally? And let's strike out physical attributes about what seems to be you personally. Would anybody naysay if I spoke for humanity and said at least, if not the most common, one of the most common would be this, would it not? And don't worry about humanity now, worry about this crowd. And then don't worry about this crowd, worry about you. Would they not, many of them, say, well, I wish I didn't go so much by the way I feel. Words to that effect. Am I not correct? All right, I wish I was not so victim of my feeling. Now, we're talking about people that perhaps would not even know the word of objectivity. Just ordinary people throughout this planet. They'd say something like, well, I wish I didn't worry so much about the way I do feel. Now, if we were talking about people who are not all that literate, then if I did want to prolong us all hanging around Cleveland, I could say, well, all right, you people that said that, is what you mean is that you would like perhaps to be led a little more by your own intelligence. And they go, yeah, that's it. That you just don't react to things about the way you feel, that perhaps you could think about them and try to get all the facts down and then try to operate on that basis. Yeah, something like that, man. Yeah, something like that. Am I not correct? So, even those who do not use the word objectivity do not think about what I'm apparently talking about being objective as opposed to just running by your feelings. Everybody on this planet is dealing with that, is made to deal with it, is made to think about it, that I am being too emotional. My whole life's been too emotional. That's how I get drug into these unsatisfying love affairs. I mean, if I could just use my brain. How many of you have heard men say that? If not yourself, we'll leave you out of it, since most of you don't qualify. But will say, I should have never got involved with that guy. I mean, I look at it now, I bet you guys knew it. The rest of the family, he was a drunk. He'd already had 4 wives. I mean, I must have been an idiot. That's what I do to let my feelings drag me along. And everybody says, yeah, Sarah, Mary, yeah, we know how you feel. What's the alternative? They believe after the fact, life makes them say, the alternative is, if I were not so subject to personal feelings. All right, consider that a fairly weak, like the violent end, not violence, violent end of the visual spectrum. All right, consider that a 50 hertz at the end of the audio spectrum. Long wavelengths, not much power, pretty weak, no force to it. That is vis-a-vis the concept of being objective as opposed to in some way being victimized by your personal feelings. Now let's run to the other end of those in the city. The more we get into civilized areas, us being at right at the nape of the neck of that and life's body, then you've got those commonly referred to as intellectuals in the city, and they're the ones that would say directly, well, that's what we need. That's what we all need, especially those down at the other end. But we all need it. I need it. I constantly, on my job, in my profession, in my social life, even working the crossword puzzles every Sunday, even I have to stay on guard not to let my personal feelings come in, especially me being a scientist, me being a mathematician, me being an instructor at a university. I cannot get involved in my personal feelings. I have got to stay on that line of being objective. or it's basing my life, even my personal life, as much as possible on facts, not personal feeling. Now, life has arranged things in that way. But life is not exempt from itself. And everything that happens, life has a fancy. Life has a preference. Life has a predilection. Or it wouldn't have two choices. For those of you that think two choices was in some way a curse of the gods, what if it was just one choice? Then it wouldn't be a choice. There's got to be two choices or nobody can choose anything. Life has a preference. Life has a passion. Life is not objective. Unless you're going to say, those of you that couldn't follow it when I started, when I gave the definition of objective being free from personal feeling, comma, based on facts. That's fine if you realize that the facts are that everybody has personal feelings and there are no such things as facts without personal feelings, because you can't even arrive at which facts you're talking about unless you've got some personal feeling. Because for whatever group of facts you've got an opposing group of facts. For every word you got an anonym. For every anonym you got a synonym. For every synonym you got an anonym for that. And so you got to have some feeling for which one you want. Life has a preference. Life has a passion. The passion, of course, is for growth, for increased complexity and intelligence. That's, believe it or not, sometimes you look around and you wonder, but that's what we're here for. Not just us, everybody. You could say that some people seem to perhaps be part of a union as part of a work slowdown or something. I don't know. It's not my business. I'll let life look after itself since it's management, but that is what humans are here for. It's part of the growth process. It is a part of an increasing degree of complexity and intelligence. But intelligence is not sans feeling. You can cut out the human brain if we're going to look at it, which is not unfair. Even I use that kind of picture. If we want to look at the human brain, the far end of the nervous system, up above the hypothalamus at least, as being human intelligence. Or I guess you could try and cut it up even further. But if you know anything about physiology, you know you can't do that. If you're going to cut it to begin with, you kill the person. The organism, this collection of molecules, may still breathe, but the person is no longer a person. In other words, they cannot think. They display nothing of the singularity of humans. But even if you could get past that, do you know there's no place to cut? If the blood gets there, it's carrying passion. And if the blood's not getting there, if you found a part in your brain or in your toe, it's dead. You got gangrene at one end or the other. So there is no place to cut and say, well, I'm going to cut here, and we're going to get down to that old booger-boo of human passion, the stuff that holds us back. Old Freud's id level is in here somewhere. We'll get down there, and what we'll do, we'll find a place that we can just perform some kind of psychic, if not ordinary surgery, and we'll cut the human brain loose and let it operate. Like some of those good old 1940 science fiction movies, they used to dream about a brain of some great guy, putting this little jar over here, formaldehyde or rubbing alcohol, and it would pulsate and think. Yeah. That's great. But you do know that literally, that's not the point. Of course, that is the point, but you and your people, you can't stand to hear it. So it's not the point that you can't do that. That's not the point. But I must point out to you that there is no place to cut. There is no line. Regardless of my diagrams, which are good diagrams and good maps, there is no place to cut and say, all right, human emotion can get up to this level, and then either it can or it should stop there. And then we get into objective thought processes. If the blood gets there, passion's there. Now, everybody, you gave a little giggle, you do understand if blood does not get to some part of your body, that part of the body is dead, literally. You knew all that. It's just dead. It's going to have to be cut out, whether it be your brain or your toe. If the blood gets there, it's carrying passion. What else? You want to know the definition of blood. If you're alive, you've got feeling. If you're not alive, you got no feeling. If some part of you is not alive, it's got no feeling. If it's got feeling, it's alive. You follow? If it's alive, it's got feeling. That includes, hate to tell you, the BRAIN, human intelligence. If life has a preference, which it do, in every juncture, it has a preference, it has a fancy. How do you believe that anything within that could be exempt in any manner? Now the closest is this, and if you shouldn't be dancing off in some wild, useless little tango in a dark corner, but any of you might, if you were thinking that you found some exception, are simply areas that somebody can bring up something that will touch your nervous system enough up here that you connect with the words, and they want to bring up a subject like the population problem, that they want to discuss it. Now you sit at a banquet, and you literally got no interest in it. That is, the energy transfer is not going to take place between you and this person on the level of them trying to talk about the potential energy problem, population problem, or the other side of it, the scam, the illusion that there is a problem with the expanding population. If you've got no more interest in that than you would if you're sitting around and you got no interest in sports, and somebody wants to talk to you about what's going on, do you think this upcoming year in the American League? And you don't even know what the American League is. You don't know what they're talking about, some kind of ball game. You don't know whether they're talking about football, baseball. You could care less. You don't know what cities have teams. You don't know anything. Now that's the closest if any of you are about to wander off in the corner and whirl around. But that is simply that you are not engaged in a heat exchange with the other person, with the subject, with life at that particular juncture. But otherwise, if you're going to dance to the tune, if your intellect is going to either accept, release energy, apparently in this regard, about baseball, about the possibility of a problem with the expanding population, if you are, it is a foregone physical fact that you already have a passion, you already have a preference, or you could not be interested in it. Do you hear me? Nobody ever takes that in consideration. The mind cannot ordinarily take that in consideration because it's got to have a preference about, well, is that true or not? If you are hungry, you've got a preference. If you're going to think about something, you've got a preference. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether you're faced with oranges or apples, either one. You got your choice. It's meaningless unless you've got a preference. The preference is, I'm hungry. The rest of it, it's a sidebar. It's peripheral. It's the dust. It's the smoke coming out of the exhaust. But you have got to have a passion to start with for food. I am hungry. Well, what would you like, apples or oranges? Well, let's see. The conclusion is, the foregone conclusion, the unrecognized reality, the physical reality, the material reality is, without a passion, without a hunger, there would be not even the illusion of a preference, of a choice. But life has it arranged to where not only do people cannot realize that, they believe that it's possible to have a choice and have no preference, that there be no feeling to it, no passion to it. Now, all of you should at least know that much by now. I should have been able to bring that to your attention, and you already go, yeah, by now. But now consider, to what end? Why are things arranged in this way? How is life using it? That, as I suggested to you, many people, a large segment of humanity, believes that they feel too much, and that their life, in fact, their feelings, someone would put it this way, that their feelings should be more in the control of their intellect. The facts. I should let the facts of matters, even the facts of relationships, facts about business. Every time I decide to go into business, or a broker calls me and I think, well, I will invest some money again in the stock market. I got some saved from last time. Finally, I'll save up a little again. So Here I go. But I got all carried away. I got all carried away, and I should read a book or take a course, and I should approach this logically. That is, based on facts. How? And why has life arranged it to where people believe it's possible? Not only do they believe that they should, that they could, that they should pursue it more, I've just pointed out to you already that it doesn't even exist, it's not possible. And they still believe it's possible. Not only is it preferable, they believe it's possible. Or if you want the other way, not only do they believe it's possible, they believe it's preferable. Either way, you're dealing with moot turned inside out. So what is it that I might suggest to you, or to try to push you to think on your own? Why is it arranged within life's body for humans to believe that there is in some way some activity in which they can be involved, the wit, thinking, that would be free? The dictionary says it is. Under objective, it doesn't stop saying an illusionary concept. He gives a whole bunch of definitions, and none of them say illusionary. And the one that I brought up, the one that has to do with this particular connotation and inflection of the word, it doesn't say an illusionary idea. It says objective, being free of personal feeling based on facts. What is life trying to do through men to make men believe that that is in some way possible? That would be a boon to the individual, and it's just obviously possible. You can read it, and everybody, even if you don't go around thinking about the word objective, as soon as at least all you people hear it, relatively educated people, they go, yeah, that'd be a good thing to do if I had more time, and I can't deny people should be more objective. Why? Why are men made to believe this which does not exist, which is not possible in the 3D world? And as I pointed out, if it was possible, whatever it was involved would be in a state of decay. You'd be suffering gangrene. That part of you would be dead. That part of life would be dead. And why is it arranged in such a way that men cannot see that life has passion? Who is it you think that stirs up everything? It's not Attilas and Neros and Hitlers and Kennedys and Stalins and me, you. Who is it that stirs it up? You think it's some human. Somebody's out there rattling around the streets and screaming and hollering in Hyde Park, or they get on a public soapbox on television. Somebody's shaking their fist, a minister, a priest, a rabbi, a politician. Who's doing that? Well, now, back in the city, they think it's the person. Life is doing it. And nobody recognizes what a sucker game this is, because everybody takes it personally directed toward the other individuals. Not just the individual that's apparently the present source, but on individuals. The people like that, their feelings are out of control. The rest of us need to be more objective, because we can't get carried away with these damn preachers hollering about we're all going to die and go to hell. I don't know what his psychological problem is, wringing his hands. But listen, we got to be objective. There is no factual basis for believing that in a hell or a life after death. There's no objective basis for believing this guy talks to God. There's no objective basis to believe there's a God. Don't get all carried away. All right, there's no objective basis to believing that there's such a thing as an unconscious in man's mind. Now, don't get carried away with that guy Freud. Man didn't know what he was doing. Wouldn't have died if he'd known anything what he was doing. We got to turn the tape over just a second. I ask you the 2 or 3 wrap-up rhetorical questions for you to consider. To what end has life arranged such things in man for man to believe and the existence, the possibility of an individual being objective, that is, of being freed from personal feeling. To be freed from personal feeling in any way without being dead, without that part of them being dead. And if you thought I was carrying it to a metaphorical extreme when I was pointing out that if some area of your brain did, or your toe did not get blood, in either case it would die, it's the same thing. If you can see it, when I point out the one area that somebody might think would be some kind of exception, and that is when there is an area brought up in which you have no feeling, that is, no interest. You are dead to it. The man sitting there, that his partner at the banquet wants to talk about the upcoming baseball season, and the man knows nothing about baseball, nothing. He knows the word. He knows people dress up in funny-looking knickers and run around out there in a field while he's at work doing important work, business. All right, do you hear me that in a real sense he is dead to that area because he has no feeling? He doesn't say, well, that's silly. What a dumb game. I looked into that. Or I'm against all sports. There's nothing. He just doesn't know anything about it. Nothing. He is dead to it. I want you to see that anything you do not have a feeling for, that is the very thing that goes against the dictionary definition of being objective, which is, I did make this clear enough, did I not start with, I assume all of you know that in the city, whether they would say it or not, they would have to agree that being objective would be the finest compliment to someone's exercise of intelligence. I assume you all, I didn't state that outright, but that would be the banner. That would be the stupor mundi in the city of a definition of an overt example of intelligence would be somebody who was objective. The brain floating in the formaldehyde. Just the facts, just the facts, just the facts. A computer. The thing is, there is nothing in human activity that is in any way free from personal feeling. Now, only somebody with a new intelligence recognizes that personal feeling is nothing personal. That you're saying at the banquet table of life, you're saying at the poker game, and somebody brings up the subject of baseball, and the guy over here goes, hey, oh boy, and he starts talking. And the guy next to you on this side goes, God, are sports dumb or what? And then the guy past him goes, baseball. In the city, they believe, all right, we've got 3 examples of personal feeling here. One guy loves baseball, another guy hates sports in general, another guy doesn't even seem to know what baseball is, doesn't seem to have any interest. So we got at least 3 personal feelings. And if you were ordinary sitting there, you would take them personally, right? Let us say that you love sports. Let us say that you are an attorney who represents that your life, your practice is based upon representing sports figures. Then you've kind of got a personal feeling about this guy over here saying we ought to do something in government or to clamp down on sports. It's too close to being violating antitrust laws. It's destroying the educational system at the college level. We ought to do something. Well, you've got a personal feeling about him already. Besides, he's going to be a terrible eating partner for another hour, some old sorehead. Right? There is an interconnected dance going on. There is the flow of blood through life. Not just the blood in your veins. There's another blood that you people cannot see that's going through the whole body of life. Ours is just part of it. If you've got blood, you have got passion. If you don't like passion, I'll put passion/heat. And if you don't like heat, remember heat is just one form of energy. So put /energy. If you do not have feeling about something, there is no energy. You're not transferring any energy. You cannot extract any energy from it. You got no interest in it. You are not being fed from it. You are not dancing with it. If it's going on, life needs it. It's feeding some part of life's body. It may not be necessary that you be interested in it. That was a literal statement. That was not as casual as it sounded. It does not need your participation, obviously. Now, you can be against it, which is fine. But you may have no interest in it. You're not going to find many areas that you could say that about, even if you could be and say it objectively. But it just shows that life does not need, as wonderful as you are individually. Now I know it, and you know it. But as wonderful and as talented and as intelligent as you are, you got to face this. For every little chicken shit thing life does, it doesn't necessarily need you, right? Well, hell, look how busy you are thinking about the big stuff. So it gets down to little things like baseball or accounting, weather forecasting, ballroom dancing, politics. You're thinking about big stuff, and so some of these areas, I'm sure some of you that I may have just mentioned, you got no interest in. It just shows that life does not like to bother a very intelligent and busy person like yourself with every little something. In some way, I still suggest very strongly to this group and the people who would end up hearing these kind of tapes on an irregular basis, that you find yourself, after seeing these tapes, with a kind of, what shall we call it? A personal feeling about it. Then I suggest to you people again, you would be prime suspects in my mass town meeting of all humanity, that all of you, to varying degrees, feel like that you're too much a victim of your feelings. Think about it. And if I ask you specifically, which some of you I don't have to ask you, when you first came here, you wrote me notes and all kinds. I didn't know. All I had to do was just kind of look like, well, you can send me a note, and immediately your notes are about, boy, the terrible ways I feel. God, you don't know how bad I feel at times, how nutty I feel. As though it was something that could be cut out of you, something you could be weaned from. Now, I've talked to you people enough and tried to sketch out enough that you have got to still be here profitably. See some of this on your own to realize that there is nothing, nobody that was arranged particularly in life, the so-called environment, but your life, that made you feel like you feel. If you still believe that, I got to say again, my God, what are you doing here? Now, you may not understand it much past that point, but you've got to be up to that point to not take the way you feel personally. Your mother didn't make you feel that way. Your father didn't make you feel that way. The dance they did together didn't make you feel that way. You've simply got to face this, that at the very least, you do not know why you have the feelings you have. And I don't mean that in some almost theoretical way. Or almost, you think that I want you to be that way, and so you think, well, I'll try. And every time you say, I'll try, then your partner, under his breath, mumbles, my mother was still a bitch, though. Well, I'll try. Your mother could have been a bitch, your father could have been a bastard. Doesn't matter. You do not really know anything. I have wasted my time, other than, of course, whenever. If you do not understand that the way you feel is not attributable to anything or anybody that you could begin to point to, no matter what everybody else in the city says, no matter if your mother says, it's my fault, and your brother says, yeah, it is her fault. I don't care if all of Freudian psychology or post-Freudian psychology would point, your father, your mother, your orphanhood when you were a kid. There's simply no explaining the way you feel. None. Now, if you're not up to that point, you're not up to any point. You're not even on the compass. You're not even on the plane. You're still back on the line. You're still in one dimension. You're still under the guise of chief one eye, not even two eyes. So, it is not a problem that you're too much victim of your feeling. You're anybody. Now, in the city, it doesn't matter. Those who say they are, it's fine. Don't ever disagree with them, unless you're trying to practice how it is to cast swine before pearls. But to get out of that level, to get away from the city, then it's not a problem of getting free from feeling. It's not the problem that people normally express so casually, that I feel too much. I wish I was not so emotional. I wish I was not such a feeling person. That's not it. Because I've tried to describe enough of you listening tonight. That's not it. If you could have that wish, you'd die. Literally. It's a little more judicious than that. Of course, in the city, nobody's judicious. That's why they only experience some success. They say, I feel too much. And they say, are you a famous mystic? And I say, yes. And they say, well, here's the keys to my new Corvette. Can you make me not feel so much? And I say, no problem. And I do it. And they die. Right? With their dying breath, I guess they would say, for the first time in my life, real success, he did it. Of course, at least I'd have a new car. But let me sidestep and make sure that you saw what I was pointing at, even those of you who reacted most heartily. If I said, all right, I can work magic, I'm in charge of that, and the guy says, or woman says, all right, one thing I won't change is I'm too much victim of my feeling. I'm too emotional. And I said, all right, I can take care of that, no problem. But let me ask you something. Now, wait a minute before I do this. And specifically, what ways are you too emotional? And what would they say? Always. Did anybody understand? That's why in the city, that's why on the 3D level, only some success is possible, because they have to, that life wires up the idea that what we've got to have is total success. And even what they say is total success is still only partial reality, that they can't see what it's connected to when they get into the fourth even, much less the fifth dimension. And so they holler out if they say, all right, I'm too emotional. And I say, I can cure it. But which emotions? All emotions. What the hell? Quit stalling. You said you could do it. Yeah, but tell me which ones. All of them. And so if I said, okay, and I did it, they'd die. Die. In the city, people are not judicious. Somebody says, I want to lose weight. How much you want to lose? Oh, hell, 100 pounds. Well, I don't know if you can do it. Just start making me lose weight. And when I get low enough, I'll tell you. But their thing is they don't know. How smart you want to be? Just as smart as you can be. How strong do you want to be? I want to be the biggest, strongest person in the world. Which habits do you want to break? All habits. I don't want any habit. At any rate, there is there's an equation in there that I'm not going to try to explain to you people because 3 dimensions will not contain it. But by demanding, by life having things arranged, this is a little off the subject, but I've talked about this before and not many of you heard it, and I got your attention. Life is arranged into the nervous system, what we call the intellectual level, in men, that they scream out, they don't know it, they don't put it this way, but they scream out for absolutes. That is, cure me of all habits. Free me from all feelings. I'm too emotional. Which emotions? All emotions. That, all across the board, is the way men are driven to think in the city, and for a reason that the equation won't fit. It won't hold just in the 3D world, but there is one that I know. I can see it. I know it. Is by demanding such, it's not possible to have full success even at that level. By demanding complete success, it's a foregone. It's ordained that all you'll get is some success. It's weird. Well, it's weird in the city, but once you see it, you go, well, hell, that explains everything. Well, perhaps not everything. It doesn't explain the one shoe in the road syndrome, but even I don't fool with that. I don't think about that. As I was saying, in the city, that his ordinary intelligence cannot be judicious. Can it? Now, it can in behavior. By judicious, I mean it can make halting steps. But when it thinks about what it should be doing, when it is planning for action, its actions may be judicious. That is, in the sense that, well, I'm not going to jump off the cliff. I'll take a little step here and I'll try to change a little bit. But their thinking is, the planning, the part of the nervous system up here, is always whole hog. Well, I can't do it. I'm going to work up. But as soon as I get my bearings here and get a little more comfortable staying here on the edge, by God, I'm going to leap. The hell with it. I just leap and I'll do it. That's what I'll do. All right, I'll start cutting down on drinking. All right, I've been drinking a quart a day. All right, I'm going to cut it down to a pint a day. And I'll say, I got to get my system accustomed to this. And I'll do that for a week, more or less, and now I cut it down to a pint But by then I'll be so strong, I'll go, fuck you, old demon rum, and I won't drink any. That's what I'll do. I'll just jump off and do it all. Do you hear that? By their own thinking, humans can never achieve full success because they demand in their thinking full success. And therefore it can't be had. Even at the 3D level, which full success wouldn't be in full success. But they would think it would, but they can't even experience that. That is where I started to try and clear it up when I point out that people in the city are not judicious. You have got to be judicious. You've got to know where to kick. You've got to know where to make the right step. You can't waste your damn time forever. And your time is this. You cannot waste your energy. So none of you are crying out, I feel too much. I know exactly what you mean when you say it, or you say, I am too emotional. I know exactly what you mean. And it doesn't have to be anything individual to any of you. I'm not thinking of anybody individually. But everyone believes that to varying degrees. And once I point out in this particular way, and if I said, all right, don't you believe it would be better if you could run your life from now on, as much as possible, free from feeling, based on fact? Right, you'd say. Especially if I had the right facts. That was redundant. I don't know why you even laughed at that, except if you're laughing at the low level of functional intelligence of all of us at the city level. Now, because what they'd be meaning by that, I say it's redundant when they'd say the right facts. All they're saying then is, all right, facts that I got, well, let's say that from me, but it's facts that you gave me free from personal feeling and prejudice on my part, right? Right. And then I would take them free from my personal feeling. Then we'd be dealing with real facts. That's the way I want to run my life. You wouldn't have a life. You'd be dead. Life would be dead. Think about it. The life of body, the body of life, has a preference every time, generally speaking. Just forget the areas that life doesn't have an interest in, because you can't see that. Life, as far as humans can tell at this level, has an interest in everything, or else it wouldn't exist. You hear me? Even you may not have an interest in sports. Life has a need for what we call human sports, and it has a preference. Now, I don't mean which team wins. It has a preference in sports, or sports would not exist for you to have no interest in, for instance, you individually. Life has a preference for anything of which you can be aware. It would not have two possibilities at the very minimal unless it had a preference. The preference is to grow, to become more complex, which is another form of increased intelligence. And it's doing specifically on one level that you can see. A few people can see. And that is through humans. You can see it. Regardless if something may be going on, and I'm not trying to stir up anybody's useless imagination, it could be going on at the level of stars, galaxies. But I'm pointing out what you in your lifetime, right here on this planet with no science fiction and no talking to UFOs or dead Indians, you can see that life is becoming more complex. Not individuals, although they're dragged along. Not the human race, although it's pulled right with it. Life is becoming more complex, and to be more complex is to be increased in your intelligence. It is a gradual process, but when it happens in one person's lifetime is why I have to designate a cutoff line to make it a quantum picture. It's what I call new intelligence. Because if it happens in one person's lifetime, that one person can begin to see this, the one person being you, if you can see it, it deserves a new name, and you'll know it has a new name. You'll know what I mean, that this is not the way I have always thought. And it's really got nothing to do with information. It's got nothing to do with facts. What it's got to do with is enriched blood. What it has got to do with is a judicious way to use the passion of being alive, your preference for being alive. Because if you do not share the general preference that I have just adequately described, trust me, I'm on better terms with Larry than you are. You know that. Or we're all in trouble. Let me tell you, his preference, the body of life, the preference is to grow, to become more complex, which is increased intelligence. Now trust me. That is life's preference. The reality of it is right in front of you. But now, what I was going to ask yourself this, but ask yourself objectively. It's just a cheap joke. Do you share that feeling with life? Now, everybody doesn't. People commit suicide. People do things less than materially destroying themselves on the 3D level. People insult themselves. The individuals in the human race, this collection of molecules referred to as individuals, each one of them is not at any given time, or not even in their whole lifetime, taken as a four-dimensional holograph. You could not look at any particular person and say, well, that person, they were really in there, they were exemplary in what you described as life's preference to grow, to become more complex, and become more intelligent. It's not necessary that you see that every individual, or any particular individual, seems to represent that for their whole life. Now we're talking about ordinary people, but now I'm talking to you. If you do not share, that is, if you're one of the ones that almost fall into the level of me saying, well, we can't use you as an example of life wanting to grow and become more complex, can we? And you go, no, I don't guess we can. When's the next meeting? We're going to meet Friday? What do you think you're up to? If your preference is not to grow, if your preference is not to become more intelligent, to increase the complexity that is you here, the rest of it's fine. If you want to lose weight, gain weight, but this is what we're talking about. This is what life is talking about to itself through man. If you do not share that personal feeling for your own life, what do you want me to say to you? Look at it another way. It's not a challenge. It's not an attack. That is what has got to be the common denominator between everybody involved with this. It always has been at any time. That's why you can look around, and we don't all look alike by any means here. There seems to be a great divergence of intellectual levels, city-wise, different taste, different feelings about life. But there is a common denominator any time a group of people, that life lets them arrange themselves with activities such as this, and that is that they do share, whether they enumerate it this way or not. And I'm not going to formulate some pledge of allegiance for us to do, but I have given you a fair verbal description of the reality. It's in the blood. You can say the words and you can feel it. That life has a preference. The preference is in any situation, not every situation as you may see it through the facilities of old Big Chief Two Eyes, through your own bifocal vision, but life's preference is to grow, is to increase its complexity, and to be more intelligent. If you belong in this, that's your reason for being alive. That is your personal feeling. Not to be here to like me, not to like the other people here, not to start a cult, not to start a religion, not to spread this and make us all famous, or me famous. I just covered it. The feeling in you, the non-objective feeling, the passion of being alive is to grow. It's for you to expand personally, for you to become more complex and more intelligent. You notice, I said that covered it. I didn't put in anything about being charitable, decent, good family person, good mother, good father, good husband, good wife, good Christian, good Jew, good Buddhist, good Caucasian, good short person, good male, good female. I said what I meant. It's got to be the passion, the preference, the same way that life has, the preference to expand and grow, to become more complex, and to increase your intelligence. Put a period there, trust me. Or put a real strong colon. That's it. That's what got you here if you belong here. It's life, not you. You didn't decide it. You're going to make me back up again and talk about how dumb you got to be to still believe that, or conversely that you can't have stayed here this long and not know that. You didn't sit down somewhere and decide to do this. You didn't read a book one time that just went pow and set you on fire, and that thing sent me on this quest. Now you're just here because of the preference that I just described, that I just verbalized. That has been your preference. And you cannot continue to hold a preference. You could not even have had the preference without being a person who feels. You are not objective. Now the question is, the same way that life, I said, has a preference. Now your question has got to be, all right, I cannot be objective. If you've heard me tonight, nobody can be objective except dead people. You cannot be objective and be alive. So, all right, I can't be objective. That is, everything that I do is based upon personal feeling. Now, we got a decent question, don't we? What feelings will I entertain? What feelings might I let direct me? Which feelings should I be resisting? And in the city, they don't know. It's just, well, all bad feelings. Well, what bad feelings? Well, feelings that go against my religion. Feelings my mother didn't like. Feelings I don't like. I don't know. But see, you've got, if you belong in this, you have got some standard. You can not be objective, but you can now do some correct measuring of the feelings that are native to everybody. That any feeling you have, is it the kind of preference that life itself would be making, that I should be making? That is my preference, my feeling for life being that I want to grow and expand. All of these, of course, you should know now, not separate. You can use everything I'm about to say again just as some synonyms. Grow and expand, be more complex, increase your intelligence. It's all the same thing. But it is not to be had on the basis that, well, wait a minute, I got to stop here and I got to deal with the way I feel because I got too many bad feelings. Welcome to the human race. Welcome to the sucker game. Yeah, well, I got some real serious, I got some personal feelings. Look up and down that line. Look at the slaughter queue. Tell me what personal feelings you got. Well, that's enough of that. You've got to see there are no singular personal feelings that you have. There were no singular, there were not even any collective sources for your feelings. If you've got blood in your veins, the feelings are in the molecules of your blood. Life put them there. Your parents didn't put them there. The environment, your childhood, the war, the depression, the fall of the stock market, the rise of the stock market, the cessation of producing Packards and Studebakers. None of that put it in your blood. Life put it in your blood. And life's preference is that it not bleed to death. Life's preference is that it grow, that it become more complex. And as far as you can see, at the 3D level, there is one creature in this universe that is directly connected with life attempting to become more intelligent. Man. You've got to judiciously use the feelings that are in the blood. You cannot waste your time trying to, all of you will assume laugh. So we'll assume you understood that. You're not trying to do away with all feelings. Everybody, oh, yeah. Because I point out the key. But now, become a little more complex. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, to be gained to try and selectively start dealing with your own blood as it is now. That is, your feelings. But, well, now I got to clean up some of my feelings. Some of my feelings, I need to go back and do like a cleanup job on the hedges. My feelings, like the hedges around your little intellectual house, some of them are high and some of them are low. They're all untidy. I need to cut off some of the bad feelings, maybe shape up some of the ones that are not too bad. Some of my feelings are a little, they could use a little cleanup, and I'll trim them. You're wasting your time. It is really, it's a chump game. It's what everybody else does. It's what you've done. It's what life wants people to do. Operating at its tempo is nothing bad. It's not a curse. It is the kind of order, it is the kind of stability, it is the kind of predictability that is necessary. It's the correct exercise of power. But you're struggling against that. That's why I call this a rebellion. You're struggling against that. We're being disorderly. Not enough to hurt life, not really enough for life to pay much attention. But anyway, forget all that. It's not important. I keep bringing up such as that. It is not enough that life stops people from doing it. That's the only thing you should be concerned about. You are not involved in some unholy quest. There is nothing to be gained whatsoever, nothing, by trying to trim up, shape up, refashion, clean up, depress, raise, pull about in any manner the feelings you presently have. If you could be intelligent, just like the dictionary would say, you would then judiciously consider the feelings you do have. And some of them you simply would not entertain. You don't wrestle with them. There's nothing to debate. There's nothing to say, well, they're too strong for me. If they're too strong for you, they're too strong for you. Go back to the city. Become a minister, and then you can denounce them, and you'll feel a lot... Then at least after every sermon, you'll feel a lot better. Why do you think those people do that? As you denounce those kind of things. That God does not want people running around and hanging out with prostitutes. Especially when you just sort of halfway dance with them like that one guy. That life hates that. So you can go back and do that. Pick out whatever it is. I'm not inferring that any of you have any sexual weaknesses, any feelings that you disapprove of. Not insinuating that, because none of you are members of the Assembly of God as far as I know. If you are, don't write me, don't write me. But you have got to realize that it is an absolute waste of your energy to even think about feelings just on the basis that some are good and some are bad, and that's your natural feeling about it. You cannot trust that. That is not, pardon me, an objective criteria, is it? That you've got blood flowing in you, and your blood gets to your brain, and it says, some of the feelings you have are untoward, unacceptable. And you go, by God, I believe you're right. Which ones? Do you understand? And you think, well, it's the ones that my religion told me, my mother told me, or some people, my conscience told me. Forget your religion, your conscience, your mother, cut yourself, and there it is. There is the history and the passion of man. There is everything you need to know right there. So the very thing that carried the message to you, that some of your feelings we should do something about. Yeah, you're right. Do you realize? Are you ready for this? The messenger is the bad news. That's why they can't get it straight in the city. That's why a few weeks ago, I thought maybe some of you would get it. Some of you laughed at the time when I pointed out that a real king would ignore that thing that they say in the city that sounds intellectual and even objective, right? When they say, well, what's the sense of killing the messenger that brings bad news? That won't help. And I kind of pointed out or suggested to you, are you sure? How about a king that doesn't like bad news? He's going to live another 40 or 50 years, and so every time they bring him bad news, he kills the messenger. And I pointed out, and a bunch of them, yeah, that's kind of, that pretty soon he wouldn't get bad news. And then I went ahead and I played the city intelligence. That someone say, well, wait a minute, that doesn't stop bad news from happening. He just doesn't hear about it. All right, what if he is my kind of king? He says, hey, don't bring me bad news unless it may get me killed personally in the next 24 hours. Other than that, bring me bad news, and it's bingo for you. And some of you laughed, some of you looked off, but how about I've just told you what it is now. The messenger is the bad news. Well, some of you thought you heard it the first time I did it. The blood, the information, the energy going to your brain that tells you the feelings that go to your brain and says, some of your feelings are not right. Some of your feelings are not humane, are not decent. And you go, yeah, you're right. Which ones? Well, let's do something about it. The feeling that brought you that is now telling you that. The messenger is the bad news. Nobody can notice it. Every time that messenger comes in, it's always bad news. But in the city, being under the auspices of that great tribe led by Chief Two Eyes, They go, all right, and they even may be used to it, and they go, oh, it's him again. All right, what is it this time? He says, well, your sire, such and such happened. He goes, well, okay, all right, go away, I'll worry about it. They don't notice. It looks like it's a different story. The messenger is the bad news. You cannot separate. It just is. How do you believe in any way that you can select feelings that you have, that some are good, I can classify some as acceptable, and some are not. And I'll work on some, I'll try and improve these others, and some of them I'll try and repress. They are the bad news. They are the news. There is nothing whatsoever to be done operating on that basis. My feeling is that that's about enough of this for tonight. My feeling is that that's probably enough of everything for tonight. But I shouldn't go by my feelings. I'll be objective about this. Okay. That's it. I was being objective. I just wanted you to know I could. All right, now I'm being objective. That's still enough.